Hi guys, hello and welcome to another C# programming tutorial. In this tutorial, we will learn about the modularization in C#. So in this one example, I would like to cover how to create a method without any parameter and call it from the main. We will also learn about how to pass parameter to a method, how to pass multiple parameters to a method, and also how to create a value returning method. Many things I want to cover with you guys today. However, in one example, brief example, not a very long, hefty example, just so that you understand the concepts. For example, I would like to start out by creating a couple lines in the main where I would like to display the output, and then I will modularize that piece of code, and that's how we're going to start the process. So first of all, I would like to create a method. I would like to create a couple of lines of code where I would like to display the following information: book title, and book price. A very simple program, just a couple lines of output. Now, generally speaking, main is the only method that you have been exposed to this far in this course. So far, this example simply displays the two lines. That is coming from the main. Now comes the question, why in the world will I ever need a modularization or a module or a method? What exactly is a method or a module is it's a named entity which can be called any number of times by the caller. So instead of writing everything in the main, I would like to designate some of this job over to a different method, which I would like to call whenever I need to call it, any number of times I would like to call it. So methods usually are structured the same way as the main is structured. So you need to start out with the word static followed by the void. These are static methods that we are creating. When I start introducing object-oriented programming to you, then I will talk about the differences between static versus non-static methods. But for now, we are creating static methods, so static void. And now I will going to come up with the name of my method, such as book info. Now, one of the benefits of creating book info as a method is that if these two instructions that are wrote in the main, if I were to repeat these instructions on the main, I would have to copy paste them again. If there are like 6 instructions that the main had and the main had to revisit them, main would have to copy paste them again. As a result, I will end up writing 12 instructions. But if I push these instructions, I'm cutting in and moving them inside book info. If I would like to call them any number of times, doesn't matter. All I need to do from the main is to make one call. That's all. And you will be able to display the contents of a method. Right now, the method is quite static, not customized, not receiving anything from outside, not doing anything different in every call. However, that's not really the purpose of all kinds of methods, but that's, again, our very first step towards modularization. And as a result, you see the same method getting called 3 times with the same set of values. Now let's start the customization process. In order to start the customization process, what we do is we start passing parameters. One of the ways to pass the parameters into the body of the method is to put it in the parentheses of the method call. So if I'm planning on passing the book title, I will pass a string title, one parameter. As soon as I do that, lines 14 through 16 start giving me a problem because now there is a mismatch. So keep in mind that the receiving, which is book info, and the calling book info from the main must match. So as soon as I start typing here the names of books, such as I type Java programming as my first book here, and then C# programming as my second book here, and C++ programming as my third book here. So as I am passing different parameters, however, since it now satisfies that there will be a string value pass and string value receive, it just solves the problem. So now I will simply delete this static Java programming text and replace it with the variable that I am receiving from the main, and I will now run the same program, and you will see that now the book name is different for every call, and that slowly and gradually we are now getting closer to our customized method calls. Similarly, I can also pass a price. So for example, if I say I would like the price for Java programming book to be $120, but for the book info for C# to hold a price of $110, and for C# it will be $125. So I now have a varying values, but since the receiver and the passer do not match until and unless I do something like this. And now they match. Now I will replace this $120 with PR and let's run it. However, when I run it, you will see that it doesn't really display things in the currency format for which I can achieve by simply calling pr.toString and convert it to currency format, which I taught you in the earlier classes in C# programming. And here you can see that I have a varying values for each call. So that's basically called customization to some extent. Now comes the question that is still main as hard coding these values. If I want it to be further customized, that main would receive these values from user and will then pass over, we could also do that. Let's try to do that. Let me declare a couple variables over here. One is of type string, and the other one is of type double. And to each one of them, we will ask user to enter a value. So I will write appropriate message for the user. Please enter a book title. And please enter a book price. And we will accept the input from user for each one of them. Read line is a string, so I do not have to do any conversion. However, the other one, which is of type double, needs to be converted to an appropriate type before we store the value in the variable. Now let's run it. And we will be able to see that we can accept an input from user. One is the title of the book, which is, let's say, vb.net, and a price. However, there is no change in the output. The reason is because I never passed these values in the call. My calls are still set to static values. So I will now change my first call from Java programming to the title that I'm accepting from the user and the price, which is the price that I'm accepting from the user. Now if I run it, it will ask for the same input as before, which is basically the title of the book and the price of the book. But this time you can see that the price and the title are reflective in the very first call. The others are very static still. So far we have seen how we can pass multiple parameters into a body of a method, and after we accept the value from user so that we can customize it. Now you will be like, okay, if I want to repeat the process, do I have to now copy this stuff and paste it over and over again for each call? The answer is yeah, but again, that is not very advisable. However, anytime you start to see that there is a repetition in the process, what do you see? You start seeing the modularization in place. Now we will be creating a very different kind of a module. This module will be a value returning module because we need to accept an input from user and send the input back to main so that the main can then process that value. It's pretty much like at a workplace, you get two kinds of jobs. One job is given to you, you do the work, and you get done with it. The other job is you do the work and you bring that result back to the person who assigned you the work. He or she takes your result and then gives it out to somebody else to work further. That's exactly how value returning methods work. So now, if I create a static method with value returning, I will not use the word void. Void represents non-value returning. So for value returning, I will rather use an appropriate data type. So if I am planning on returning a string value back to the caller, I'll say the return type of this method will be string. The name of the method is input, and here you go. Now it starts giving me an error because I still have to write one instruction, which is a return instruction required by the input method. Therefore, first of all, let me complete the body. So this method will do the following. I'll copy these two lines and paste it here. This method will ask user to enter a book title, will accept the book title from the user, and will then return that book title back to the caller. That's basically what it is doing. Accept an input and return the input. Once I complete this logic, these two lines pretty much do not make sense anymore to be in the main. Rather, main can designate this job to a method called input. Now, how will this work? This is how it will work. When the compiler will, when the executor during runtime will hit this line, input method call will be generated to line 27, which will ask user to enter a book title. The book title will be accepted from user and will then be returned back to line number 14. So as you can see, the logic in my main is not as complicated as it was before. Rather, I have designated the job someplace else. So now if I want to constantly accept title and send it back to the user, I can do exactly the same thing over and over again, except for I do not have to redeclare the variable over and over again. For example, after I display the first book info, okay, I can accept the title again, and I can just pass the title over here just like that. Just to show you that the same variable can be used twice and the same input method can also be called twice. So now let's run it. So you will see the first time it runs, it asks for a book. It asks for a price. Then it asks for another book. And it automatically displays the price because the price is fixed on line number 19. I'm not asking the input again. Now comes the question, can I somehow customize my message that I would like to display to the user? And the answer is yes. So what I will do is I will also pass a parameter to this value returning method, and we'll change the parameter to this. Now, of course, line number 14 and 18 are giving me an error because there is a mismatch. The receiver requires a parameter, but the passer is not passing any parameters. Therefore, to do the match, I will come up here and enter the book title. That was the message, right? I will just simply put that message here. Please enter a book title. The moment I do that, that error goes away from there, and then I can do the same thing. Please enter a book title, and that way I'm able to customize my titles. And I do not need to put a title on line number 30. So this way, I could create one method which could accept any kind of value of type string and return it back. And I can pass it whatever I want. So, for example, in one case, I can say, please enter a book title. In the other instance, I can say, please enter an ebook title. So I can now customize my messages just like that. So now let's run it so that you can see that it is working perfectly fine, the way we expect it to work. That first time it should run and ask to please enter a book title. So here we have C++, it asks for the price, and now it asks me, please enter an ebook title. So as you can see that we were able to customize the message. Now let's go to the next step. The next step would be, okay, can I use this method to accept a double value? And the answer is certainly yes. Why not? Because now that the method is customizable and it can accept any kind of a message from outside, I'll use that message to display to the user. So you'll be like, but I need a double value. I do not need a string value. You have already solved that on line number 16 because anyway you're accepting a string and converting it to the double, right? All you need to do is this. Make a call to input and pass this message that you wrote on line number 15 inside the input, and then simply get rid of line number 15. So what you are doing now is you are making a call to input and passing this message, please enter a book price. It will accept a book price from the user, and to be on the safe side, I'll just change this to some variable instead of locking it in title, because again, the names do not have to match. The data types has to match. So now it will return the value back to line number 15, which will then be converted to double and will be stored to the price in the price variable. Let's test this. So let me run this again, and here we go. We'll enter the title of the book. We're going to enter the price. As you can see, I'm entering the price. It's working exactly the same way before. To the user doesn't know the logic behind the scene. The user doesn't know that I've now modularized the process. So all of this is not important to user, but to the programmer. And that's exactly why we're learning it, because you're learning to become a programmer, not a user. So here the user is unaware of the underlying changes, but the programmer has completely changed how things are. Exactly the same way, the user can now be entering values for any of the books and the price for any of the books. All I need to do is I need to repeat this logic again for my second book. And now without redeclaration, I can then pass that price. So please enter an ebook price. So this is basically what we're doing here. Let's run it again. And now it will ask for a book title. It will ask for a book price. And now notice it asks for an ebook title and it asks for an ebook price. And as you can see, the methods are very, very customizable. Now, there is one more thing that you can do. If you are planning on using the value that is returned back to you any further in any of the further instructions, then it makes sense to store it in a variable and then use it. However, if it is only to be used to pass it over to another method, then you do not need to store it in a separate variable and then pass it. You can save yourself some time by making a call directly from the method call. So what exactly I'm trying to say is this, that instead of storing the value first in the title and then giving title as a parameter to book info, I can originate the call right here where I would be using my title variable. I can simply copy the method and paste it right there. What this will do is this. When the book info first hits the first parameter, it notices the first parameter of book info must be a string, and that's what the input returns, right? Something of type string. So it will come to pause and make a call to input. Input will go and accept an input from the user based on the message that you are putting in place, and then the value will come back and will be plugged in place of the call. Similarly, I can do the same thing for that 125.00. I can just put this whole convert.toDouble instruction in place of 125.00, and that's exactly what gets placed over there. So as you can see that how the instructions are created behind the scene, a user will be totally unaware of it. It apparently may look a little bit complicated. However, when you get used to it, you'll be like, oh wow, that's cool. They're going to save me from having to write so many instructions. You do not need to write all these instructions anymore to accept it into a variable and then call it. If you convert line number 19 and line number 16 to the similar calls, you will see that your main will actually reduce its length from all these instructions to just 3 calls to book info, and all of these other instructions will automatically vanish. That's a great savings in terms of number of instructions that you would have to code. Now let's look at it and let's run it, and you will see that the program works exactly the same way. Now we will be accepting title for each one of the books. So let's say the first one is C, price is 123. Second one is C++, the price is 145. Third one is Java, the price is $56.66, and here you go. You have been able to customize all of your inputs. Now you can further reduce it by following the same procedure over and over again. So let me copy this and replace these 3 lines. Then I'm going to copy this and replace these 3 lines. As you can see, and I can just make this book and I can leave the others to ebook. And as you can see, your main is far more condensed, far more reduced, and extremely easy to process. So let's have a look at it. Enter a book title, enter a book price, enter a book title, enter a book price, enter a book title, enter a book price. Works great, right? So now we will learn about one last thing in today's class, which would be how to give a default value to the parameter like message, that when no other value is provided, it will fall to that default value. It is called optional parameter. It means you're making your parameter optional. So all I'm going to do is I will going to default my message to this value, enter a book title. Okay, so if no parameter is provided to the input call, it will automatically use please enter a book title. Let me now drop this double quotes here. And as you can see, my input call is also reduced further in length. So Any message that I think I'll be using more often, I can now put that as my default message. So let's run it now and notice here in the output that please enter a book title, which is coming from a default value, is automatically grabbed, and I will be able to use it just like I use any of the other calls. So the customized messages is where you can use whatever you want to use, and for the others, you can just fall back to the default message. So anyway, in a nutshell, in this one short, brief example, I was just trying to put together as many concepts as possible. You can further reduce your code if you would like. For example, look at line number 27. Line number 27 is accepting an input from user and simply packing it into the variable and returning the variable back. You can also save yourself by simply putting the read line directly in the return statement, and it will not complain. So what it will going to do, it will going to give a message out to the user. The user will enter a value. As the value comes and sits in the memory, right away it will be sent back to the caller. So as you can see, you are coding less and less and less, more condensed. However, your program is still getting extremely let me rerun it, because while talking I entered something else for the title instead of a price. So, well, the bottom line is, as you are putting in, you're customizing this, you are condensing the code to some extent also. So, voila, in a few lines of code, as you can see, in a few lines of code, with the help of modularization or method calls, you were able to do what otherwise would require far more lines if you were to do this linear, without modularization, without effective condensation of the code. Anyway, I'll catch you in the next tutorial. Please let me know through your comments how you feel about this tutorial, if this really helped you in understanding modularization, method calls, parameter passing, value returning, optional parameters, and many other concepts that C# brings forth. Even if you are learning Java or C++, similar kind of concepts still apply to any of those languages. So catch you in the next one. Till then, take care. Bye-bye, guys.